1990 Nissan Maxima SE. Ah yes, the third generation Maxima. With handsome looks and a free revving V6, this was that Maxima that everyone loved. Now, this particular specimen is actually not new to the internet. This modest old black sedan was featured on Jalopnik's Nice Price or Crack Pipe series earlier this month, garnering 63% nice price responses after roughly 10,000 total votes. So, I contacted the owner, Louis Christea, who coincidentally also has a YouTube channel, and he graciously let me take it for a spin. All of my recollections of people's experiences with these Maximas share a common theme. People loved these. Everyone who ever drove one seemed to hold it in high regard. These cars won comparison tests. These cars were seen as cool. My Uncle Tony, who rotated girlfriends on a seemingly weekly basis in the 90s, drove one of these. Our perpetually wealthier seeming next door neighbors, the Nixons, had one brand new. These were cars that were desirable at the time. They looked good, they were comfortable, they drove well, and they piled on the miles. This sedan struck that rare balance between daily driving comfort and driving engagement with a mainstream price tag. This was, ladies and gentlemen, in my humble opinion, peak Maxima. This was the Nissan brand's flagship car, all new for 1989. 89 was a big year for upper-end models at two of Japan's biggest car makers, Nissan and Toyota. Both of them launched new luxury brands in the US, Infiniti and Lexus respectively that year, and both of them launched new generations of flagship cars for their mainstream brands, the Maxima and the Cressida, that year as well. But in spite of Infiniti's release, discontinuation was decidedly not in the Maxima's future, and Nissan was going to take this ball and run with it. This car might not have been as expensively built as a Toyota Cressida, but it may have been more thoughtfully designed. The cheaper Maxima feels like less of an afterthought than its contemporary Cressida was. It seems to follow the style of BMW, a brand of which many of the Maxima's drivers were probably intenders, minimalist and sporty. Nissan really put their heart and soul into this car. The details they baked into its design, like the white-faced gauges, the transparent resin piece on the rear fascia bearing the car's name, the cheesy four-door sports car stickers. Nissan actually put some thought into this one, and their marketing scheme was clear. This flagship was to be a sporty car, not a soft car, and why shouldn't it be? After all, its curb weight wasn't excessive, not much over 3,000 pounds, so with the right suspension, this car had the potential to be downright fun to drive, and so it had. And so it was. Nissan's sales model with this car was not to offer a whole lot of standalone options. Essentially, you either bought a GXE or an SE, and they came with either the GXE equipment or the SE equipment, and that was that. Now, what we've got here today is a Maxima SE. This was sportier and more expensive than the GXE, which was the Maxima's only other trim line. The differences between the two start on the outside, with standard fog lamps, dual exhaust tips, and blacked out trim on the SE, which came with stiffer springs, larger sway bars, wider tires, and rear disc brakes to back up its sportier image. Anti-locks were an available option on the SE only. Additional goodies like the Bose stereo and power moonroof further served to justify the price increase over the GXE, but perhaps most importantly, the SE was available with a manual transmission, a 5-speed manual, such as this car is fitted with, while the GXE was not. Standard on all cars were power windows and locks, air conditioning, cruise control, AM/FM cassette, keyless entry, and a rear window defroster. But one noteworthy option was what Nissan called a supersonic sonar suspension, which used sensors to read road conditions ahead and then electronically adjusted shock dampening accordingly. This particular car does not have that option, and accounts vary as to the effectiveness of the system. Its theory of operation, what with the sensors and electronically adjustable struts, is roughly similar to some of the advanced active adjustable suspensions that are on the market today. And while I think that it's neat that Nissan was way ahead of their time with the supersonic sonar suspension on a nearly 30-year-old car like this one, I think that the standard suspension such as this car has is probably easier and cheaper to maintain. Now, while this particular car is a 1990 SE, it's worth mentioning that the 1992 through 1994 SE came with a pretty significant upgrade over both the GXE and the earlier SEs. It's the engine. The 1992 SE got a brand new Maxima exclusive V6 called the VE30DE, with dual overhead cams, 24 valves per cylinder, variable intake timing, and a variable intake manifold. It was good for an extra 30 horses over the VG30E that this car has. And to top it all off, this new engine came with a viscous limited slip differential. This generation Maxima may have been the best looking of all time. You see, the Maxima that came out after this one came out when round was the next big thing. Round was for sure a very huge thing, and very large and important people on Wall Street were calling up very large and important auto executives on their car phones and asking, Jim, my guys are telling me round is the next big thing. Our investors are looking for more round. What are your guys doing about round? Round! Oh, buddy, are you talking to the right guy or what? Yeah, we got round. We got whole floors of guys dedicated to round. Entire office buildings. We got manila folders, whole filing cabinets full of round, just waiting to be released for next model year. My assistant just walked out of the office with some of our round. Buddy, I've seen it, and 1990 round is going to be the roundest year in the history of the Round Motor Company, or I'll be square. And so, yeah, that's when we kind of got this kind of stiff. But this car came out before Nissan succumbed to the round craze, and so it has proper, muscular, angular, well-cut lines, and yet it's not boxy and stodgy like its predecessor. It's got excellent proportions for a front-wheel drive car, but the highest compliment I can give this car's design is that it looks good from every single angle. This car doesn't have a single bad angle. There's no way that you can look at this Maxima and have it appear awkward. It's always slick. It's always cool. Again, peak Maxima. Now, all of this is not to say that the 1995 Maxima was as bad off as the Infiniti J30 or the Ford Taurus, but in my opinion, it's a distinctly less masculine, less aggressive, less youthful looking car than this, the 1989 to 1994 model. Exterior chrome level, 0. Interior chrome level, 0. This car had no chrome trim whatsoever, a bold move for an upper middle market car in 1990. The GXE trim had a bit of chrome around the windows and a chrome grille, but this SE traded that look for a full monochromatic black scheme that was forward thinking at the time and is still modern and sporty today. The SE also added the rear spoiler that you see here. Trimmings are not ostentatious, but build quality is very high. The body's construction is relatively simple, with interior and exterior trim tending to be composed of several large pieces as opposed to many smaller ones. Materials used for the dashboard and door panels are plain and modest. Fitment tends to be very tight, and components such as handles, latches, and switches are durable. The leather-wrapped steering wheel specific to the SE is a nice touch, although it hasn't held up well. The Bose logos plastered on all of the speakers throughout the cabin may be the single gaudiest part of this car's whole look, and that's saying something. The interior is relatively large, with plenty of space for adults to stretch out front and rear. This is due in no small part to the Maxima's width, which was substantial compared to earlier Japanese cars at the time, since Japan's tax structure penalized cars for additional width. The big windows contribute to a sense of roominess and also aid in visibility. It's easy to see over the hood, which is relatively low for a front-wheel drive car. In fact, this relatively low hood height actually influenced the valve train design of the VG30DE, which I mentioned earlier, came exclusively in the 1992 through 1994 SEs. Seats are supportive from the thighs up to the shoulders, and the upholstery is pleasant and soft. Driver ergonomics are good overall, although radio and climate controls are a bit of a reach, and the steering wheel doesn't telescope, although I didn't find it particularly necessary for this car. Pedal placement works well for spirited driving or steady-state cruising, and the driving experience of the Maxima is very pleasant, with a free-revving, playful V6 at its foundation. Anyone who says 160 horsepower can't be fun is dead wrong in my book. Leave it to Nissan to build a fine, naturally aspirated V6, and on paper, this engine doesn't look particularly sophisticated. Iron block, 2 valves per cylinder, single overhead cam, old school distributor ignition, no variable valve timing, but boy does it sing. This engine loves to rev, always begging to be pushed a little bit more and always delivering satisfaction when you do. This V6 will smoothly bump up to its redline in a split second. Such simplicity, yet such awesome character and feel. The weakest spot of the Maxima's driving dynamics is its steering, as, after all, this is a front-wheel drive car. It's light and torque steer is certainly evident, although it does track very steadily while cruising. The clutch is excellent. It's smooth, fairly light, engages early in its release, and operates intuitively and progressively. The same can't be said for shifter feel though, which is light and a bit rubbery in its engagement, although shifting is ultimately secure with no grinding or difficulty finding gears. This is a nimble car with little body lean. The car shifts its weight around well, a product of not only the firm suspension and low weight, but more importantly the well-designed suspension geometry. This car features independent rear suspension, while its successor actually went backwards to a cheaper solid beam rear axle. Being front-wheel drive, weight is concentrated over the front wheels, so potholes come through with a bit of a crash as they pass under the front axle. At speed, this car is steady and stable, with no shaking or vibration, indicating that its unibody structure is well designed with sufficient rigidity. Now let's talk about performance of intended function. It's a metric which Motor Trend uses to evaluate bestowage of its Car of the Year award, and a metric by which this Maxima excels. Not only is it engaging to drive, but the Maxima has keen daily drivability. The elbow space for the driver, the leg space for the rear passengers, the car's willingness to dart around town, its comfort in a straight line. This car doesn't wear on you. You don't get tired of driving it in traffic. This is a car of meaning and substance. From its design to its mechanical workings, everything about this car was painstakingly well thought out, and yet nothing about it was flashy. This car offered little in the way of gimmicks, little in the way of BS, and yet it was much more than a boring appliance. This car was truly meant to do the job of being a car very well. It wasn't a sports car or a sport utility pandering to our dreams of lifestyles we didn't live. Nissan simply dotted all their I's and crossed all their T's with this one. Nissan did all of their homework, and then some with this one. Nissan sweated the technical details and got all of the fundamentals perfectly right with this one. This car had everything you needed and nothing you didn't. And without that layer of fat slathered atop your four wheels, the Maxima's inner beauty is laid bare, and this car offers an unfiltered representation of the form. It's automotive transparency, and so the third generation Maxima has stood the test of time. Ladies and gentlemen, this was peak Maxima. If I may, this was maximum Maxima.